Hello and welcome to the Eugene Real Estate Podcast. I am your host, Vince Casey. This is the first podcast devoted entirely to the Eugene real estate market, where every month we invite on local experts to discuss current trends in the ever-changing landscape that is real estate. This month's guest is Bryan Ranstad. He is one of the owners and principal brokers at Hybrid Real Estate. He and his wife Kelly started Hybrid in 2008. Since then, they have grown into the biggest real estate brand in Eugene and Springfield, in both market share and number of agents. They have consistently outperformed other top national brands. Bryan, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Vince.
Bryan, what are you and Kelly putting in the water over there at Hybrid? You have completely peaked as a company. You continue to grow every single month. What is Hybrid doing differently that is creating success for your agents and clients?
Well, Vince, I hope that we have not peaked. I hope that we continue. But, I think it just comes down to focusing on what's the most important thing, which of course is our client experience. We also just try to have the best tools available for our agents and for our clients. And I think that our agents and as a company, we just take every effort to really just plug into our communities, Hybrid's Older House is a project that is, really close to my heart. It is a 9-plex down on campus for homeless youth ages 15 to 21. There's 500 homeless kids identified just in 4J alone. And Hybrid Real Estate just decided that this was the thing that we wanted to be a part of and try to give back to our community and try to help our community, especially in this homeless arena. Hybrid agents renovated and furnished all the apartments. It's Looking Glass that does wraparound services. That means like for the substance addiction or for counseling, education, life skills, things like this. And it's been a really, really great project and a lot of success. Actually, about 9 of the kids have already graduated from the program and moved on to their own living situations. And when hybrid agents, when an agent decides to be at Hybrid Real Estate, or if a client decides that they want to do business with Hybrid Real Estate, they are in part supporting Hybrid's Older House. And it's very exciting.
Thank you so much for doing that. That is a cause that is very near and dear to my heart. You've mentioned tools, and not to give anybody too much of a peek behind the curtain, but you've developed an offer strategy using just mounds of data to create a guide for clients to use in multiple offer situations. It's not necessarily concrete, but if clients choose to use the system, they generally experience about an 87% success rate. How much time and effort did you put into making that data come alive?
It definitely took some effort, a lot of data. It's kind of a guide. In the past few years, we've had multiple offer scenarios, whether it's just, a few offers, 2, 3, 5, or 10 or 20. And the problem is that a client looks at their agent and says, how much should I offer? And the agent didn't necessarily have a great answer of what that should be. And so the tool basically just breaks down into some percentages. If you do this, you'll be this successful,
right?
33% successful. And if you do this plus this, then you'll be 67% successful. And if you do this, you'll be 87% successful. And you can give that to a client and say, so this is a guide to how this has worked in the past. What kind of an offer do you want to make? How do you want to enter into this strategy and put your foot forward in the best way that you feel comfortable with?
Yeah, absolutely. I've used this formula myself as a hybrid agent, and I have to say it's powerful. And unless we ran up against some California cash, it usually landed us the deal. So thanks for making that.
Of course.
Well, Bryan, it's April. It's the official start to the buying season. As a principal broker, I know you see a lot of deals come across your desk. What does the beginning of the buying season look like to you? What type of activity is out there right now?
Well, the industry and the market is definitely different now than it has been in quite a while. Um, Nationally speaking, we're down probably around a third or 30% in terms of volume. When I say volume, what I mean is the number of transactions occurring. Um, if we look at the values of properties, that's that can be very difficult to say on a month type of basis, but there's different parts of the nation, of course, which are down 30%. There are different parts of the nation that are up. Eugene is pretty much held even. The national statistic is that we are down something like, or yeah, we're down like 1.2% or something. But again, that's a national statistic, and real estate is local. And you need to make sure that you're getting your information from your local sources and experts.
Absolutely. So you mentioned the rate increases have slowed down market activity. How big of a player are buy downs right now? Or, in other words, how many buyers are buying down their rates right now?
That's difficult to say. There's two different types of rate buy downs. There's one where you are buying down the rate for the life of the product. And so, buying down the rate for a 30-year fixed. Those don't happen very often for various reasons, but they're also very expensive. Of course, it depends on the lender. It depends on the size of the loan, but we're talking, upwards of 30,000, and beyond for that type of a rate buy down, versus a short-term buy down. Essentially, those are going to cost somewhere around 10,000 or so, and the first year that borrower is in their loan, it might be 2 points under the current interest rate. So let's just say interest rates were at 7. They would spend that first year at 5, and then the second year for a year at 6%, and then they would go to the 7%. And what's nice about those is that the buyers can retain the cost of that short-term buy down. So if they do refinance before that third year, they actually get to retain those funds instead of it just going to the bank, which is pretty nice.
Gotcha. So when you are seeing a buy down situation, is it typically the sellers that are participating in the buy down, or are the buyers using their own cash or their own funds?
A combination. A combination. There's a lot of opportunity right now in the market to negotiate, and just depending on the deal, there's definitely opportunity for a seller to pay for all of it, or at least part of it. Maybe I shouldn't say at least. I mean, it really just comes down to the deal.
I hear you. So are you still seeing a lot of cash deals out there?
We are. We can just continue to see a lot of cash deals, especially for the end user, an end user being the purchaser who is going to live in the property. Maybe not as many cash deals from investors. They may be waiting and seeing to see what happens in the following months with inflation and with the Fed interest rate hikes, and how long they're going to stay at the levels that they are. Do they go higher? What that next step is.
Sure, that makes sense. One of the reasons I'm hopeful that APR rates will come down is because the impact that it's having on the market slowdown. Basically, a real estate slowdown is an economic slowdown for us. So many people earn their living from the housing market, so that's definitely affecting us in a negative way. At some point, won't the Fed just have to lower rates just to feed the economy? What's your perspective on that?
Well, the Fed is, of course, hiking interest rates because they're fighting inflation.
Right.
And why fight inflation? Well, there's a few reasons, but the most important ones, I think, to most people are it creates a scenario where you just have less buying power. The money that you have is not worth as much as it was before. This is especially true for retired people or people that are on fixed incomes. They really get hurt by high inflation because that money that they work their whole lives to save is just not worth as much. It just doesn't go as far. You can also have the loss of goods and services, which would mean something like if I have an auto problem, I'm going to go get that fixed, right? I mean, because I kind of have to if I have to have my car, I've got to go buy food, I've got to go buy gas. But there's a choice when it comes to having your nails done, or if you're going to take your kid to the trampoline park, right? These are optional things that you can kind of decide not to do. And of course, if enough people choose not to do that, then restaurants close, nail salons close, and that's also a problem with inflation. That stems from that situation.
Yeah, it definitely does. I even canceled my monthly chiropractor appointment recently, so I know that everyone's kind of feeling it. So the Fed increased rates to fight inflation. In your opinion, from the data that's starting to come back, is it working?
It is working. Inflation is definitely coming down, but is it coming down fast enough? There's been some scariness with some banks, and things are a lot different than they were back in the 40s. I think that people think about the 40s as stockbrokers really having a hard time, just mayhem in the streets and things like this. But I think that you have to remember that the Great Depression was a run on the banks. It was a banking failure that created that scenario. And so when you have these banks that are failing, the Fed is really looking at that, and they are really noticing what's going on there. And inflation has come down, but their target rate is 2%, and we're at not anywhere close to that. It'll be interesting to see where the numbers lie this month. They plan to take it up another 0.25% and then leave it there for the rest of the year. But if we look at the stock market, they say otherwise. So it's a really interesting scenario that's going to be playing out in the next couple of months. And inflation is coming down, so that's a huge benefit. But is it coming down fast enough? And what else can be done? And that actually sets up a really interesting scenario for the real estate market, right? Because if the Fed does pivot, and if they decide we're going to take a pause, what does that trigger exactly? Does that trigger some extreme negativity? Because why is the Fed pausing and not doing what they said that they were going to do? Or is it an opportunity and the stock market is off to the races? People flood back into the real estate market, and we're right back to competing offers and the craziness of the last 2 years, 3 years, really. It's a very interesting time to be involved, for sure.
Yeah, it seems like we're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul at this point with inflation versus the economy, and I'm glad I'm not in charge of that decision. So, living with this new normal of higher rates, what opportunities do you see out there in the market?
Well, and when I say before, I really mean like the last 3 years, like 2020 through 22. So I say 2020 through 22. During that environment, very, very common to see properties go for, much, much more over asking, 20, 30, 60,000 over. I remember seeing one for 200,000 over that didn't get the property. So it was very, very competitive. And today, full price will do it a lot of the time, if not less. And FHA buyers, VA buyers, USDA, great opportunity to not be competing against that cash or someone who is waiving the appraisal contingency or not doing inspections and all this, that just very competitive situation that has happened before. Anymore now, we can come in and have a normal conversation, have an opportunity to negotiate, and really know what it is that we're purchasing, and those buyers just feel great. And again, it is for buyers that have not wanted to compete or have been beat out in those situations. It's an opportunity right now.
Absolutely. I completely agree with that sentiment. I just recently worked with a young couple that just had a child, and we were a USDA buyer, which was a really weak position, about a year and a half ago. And we ended up getting under asking We got all of our closing costs covered, and we even had a portion of a buy down covered. I believe altogether, they spent less than $3,000 to get their new home, which that's completely unheard of in a really robust seller's market. So this is an opportunity for weaker buyers, people that have been having issues competing, may want to revisit those conversations with their agents or revisit those conversations with their lenders and really see what's available out there.
For sure.
So I have a few clients that are doomsday predictors. They're always trying to predict a down market or a bubble burst. Is there anything right now in our market that's a problem or something real and tangible that we should be concerned about?
That's a great question. It is very difficult for me to articulate or come up with a scenario where our market has enough supply that we really go in the other direction, where we really go down. I think that, I mean, I would describe our market, one of the problems with the market is that there's just not enough inventory, and if you don't have enough inventory, then, your supply side is just stuck. The demand is on fire. Many, many people would love to purchase a home. Why is that? Well, it's really the first way that you can control your living expenses. You know, Renters, if you're in that situation, every 6 months, every year, your rent is going to go up by some percentage. At least it is right now. And it feels like it's never ending, and it feels like it's going up by a lot. And if you purchase, then of course you're in this long-term scenario where your payment is the same. Your property value can go up, but your payment remains the same, which is just, it's really nice. So that's kind of the first step for so many people. And so inventory is a huge issue. If there's people that really want the market to come the other way and really go down, there has to be a drastic increase of supply. And that's just the bottom line. And I don't know where that's going to come from. It doesn't seem like there's a lot of will to make building more affordable or faster. The governor of Oregon has really tried to step in that direction. But even when that does happen, how many years will it be before that really hits the market and can make a difference? I don't know. So I think supply is just really, really difficult. I would say actually there's another problem with the market, and that is there are a lot of buyers that were very excited to buy, but were not successful because they were competing against other buyers that had better terms. And at that time, they could qualify for a 450, say. And with interest rates going up, they cannot afford that amount anymore. Now they can afford, 325 or something. And that is really, really disappointing and depressing for buyers to be in that scenario. And it's really difficult to think about that property that you were looking at that 450 range and then go and look at something that is, less and feel great about it, right? It doesn't feel good. And that's a really good example of just the affordability issue. Your last guest, Matt Powell, had talked about buying power. And I think of it a little bit differently. I think of it as that affordability issue.
Right.
What happens then, right? What happens when the Fed decides to pivot? What happens when rates come down? Is that going to be the opportunity for these buyers to purchase that same place for, that same 450 type of value now? I would really have a hard time thinking that would be the scenario. I think that affordability would probably show up in appreciation of properties instead, which I know is really disappointing to hear, but that's the way that I see that. And so again, controlling your living expenses is really important. And for buyers to, start where they can get in, where they feel comfortable, where it's affordable. And if the market does go the wrong way, being down, that they're okay because they can afford that property. They could, that property is good for their life for today. And, few years down the road, then they can look at upgrading to that next property that may be more like the one that they were looking at before.
The Eugene City Council has a bill on the proposal stage that would limit rent increases to 5% a year. It would also require to select the first qualified tenant to retain the lease, or in other words, no more cherry picking when it comes to your tenants. There's a few other caveats to this as well. Now, obviously, this would be great for renters. This is good news for them, for have been looking for relief in the rental market for a while now. What potential impact would this have on the real estate market and potential investors?
It's a great question, Vince. The spirit of that ordinance really is to protect renters from being priced out of the communities that they help to create, right? And I think it's a really interesting question, and it's probably a better question for your next guest next week, Isaac Judd, who I believe is one of the authors of that ordinance. I think that my concern is the unforeseen consequences that might come out of that, right? And so if you make conditions too difficult to be a landlord, then there are other options. There is going and purchasing in Springfield. There is purchasing in other areas of Oregon or leaving Oregon altogether. And when I see or I think about trying to be a landlord in that type of climate, it just makes me think, maybe that would be a better time for me to sell and move my money somewhere else. And if that's the case, and there was a significant number of rentals, single family dwellings that were sold, then we are changing the landscape in many ways of the Eugene market. Much fewer rentals as those single family dwellings. And you're really displacing, I think, a lot of those renters that you're trying to protect, because when it's sold, it's going to be sold to an end user, right? And those renters will be displaced. And I don't think that we can really see what the unintended consequences of that type of ordinance would be.
Right. I could even see the landlords pivoting into Airbnbs or Furnished Finder, or getting into the more of a short-term rental. But is that a normal practice? Is rent control something that every city participates in?
You find rent control in New York City, San Francisco, and then the state of Oregon has a rent control type of idea for populations over a certain amount. But it is not typical. The other side of the question is, if we're going to set up these parameters for that are going to benefit renters and help renters to maintain some affordability with the rentals, is there also going to be the other side of that, where the city is also going to put aside funds for damage to properties, or be able to fill in where tenants maybe are unable to make rent from time to time? I mean, what does that side look like also? If you're limiting the amounts of deposits and things like this, then how does a landlord really function to be able to guard against whatever cleanup is going to be needed later, right, to fix those things? And that's also, if you're a landlord and you have a rental and you fix it up and you put your heart and soul into it and you make it really cute, and then you get it back 6 months or a year later, and all of that work and all that money is seemingly gone, and that rent that you were collecting is just covering the mortgage because this is a long-term game for you, and you get to do it again, so now you're underwater by thousands of dollars, $15,000, $20,000. It doesn't make you want to be a landlord for very long. And so that's why you have those deposits, right? That's why you have that safety put in place. And if the government is going to essentially take that tool away from the landlords, well, are they going to then provide it in some other way? How does that work?
Yeah, I've been helping an investor that wants to find a rental property, and basically nothing on the market pencils. So they're basically debating whether they want to jump in and try to break even for a few years to see if they want the price of rentals to catch up to where it will be a good investment, or whether they just want to withdraw altogether, which, needless to say, is a pretty difficult choice.
It really is, because, as an investor, where are you going to put your money? Is it in the stock market? Is it in your savings account? Or is it going to be real estate? Real estate has been an excellent tool for long-term wealth building for, long time. And to decide that, real estate isn't the right tool, right vehicle for that, then you think about, well, where am I going to go from here? And that's an issue, especially if you're making it harder as a landlord, in our local area.
Yeah. Where do we go from here? I think that's kind of a great way to end this segment. Well, folks, I think that's all the time we have. Bryan, if someone needs to get a hold of you or someone over at Hybrid, what's the best way to reach out?
You can reach us at hybridrealestate.org. All of our agents are there, and of course my contact information is there as well. And you can just go there and find all kinds of information.
All right, that's great news, and thank you so much. That's our show. I'd like to thank Bryan for joining us today. I'd like to thank Patty Rose for producing the show, and I'd like to thank all of you for listening. Next month, we will be joined by Isaac Judd from Hearthstone Real Estate. Good night, and I'll see you next time.